Hello, my name is Ethan Page, and today we're going to be having a look at the second part of my 5-part project for my GPE340 class to do with root motion. In this project we'll be going over a few things such as inverse kinematics for a variety of weapons, pickups, how those are handled with inheritance, a little bit of UI, very basic, some respawning targets, that sort of thing. So right off the bat, let's just have a look. Start off with the weapons. I spawn with one in the default. It shoots. It's pretty good. Character sprints. He's still holding the gun in all the right ways. And if I go to the scene here, and let's just zoom in on him. And if I grab that gun, grab the container, gun works too, but you know. Hey, look. Inverse kinematics. Good fun. I'll look a bit more at that in a bit more detail in a moment, but let's show off the fact that these weapons do different things. Like this shotgun, for example. As you can see there is quite the shotgun. I can pick the rifle back up and rifle. And then there's a sniper rifle. One shot. Very long between shots, that sort of deal, but does a lot more damage. These all have IK on them. I can muck about with this and woo, his hands break, but they stay where they're supposed to. And the same goes for the shotty. I'll do that real quick. A little too fast. Yep. Hands stay where they're supposed to. Now, if we have a look here, I will show off some of the code of this. So the weapon has, all the weapons have two main scripts. There's the main weapon script and then the projectile weapon script. Seeing as I'm only working with guns here, projectile weapon is a bit more filled out, but it still has some of the data from weapon because it inherits from it. You know, the right hand and left hand IK target stuff, whether or not it's currently attacking, and these two virtual functions. The overrides are here. They're grayed out and not in use. I did have some debugs and stuff in here just to make sure, and they were working fine. But at this point they sit here to be used should anything else need to be added specifically to this version. Otherwise, this code handles setting the different animation types for which weapon is being used, which is why the shotgun is lower down, held lower down than the rifle or the sniper rifle. This data block here, the gun settings, is all of the things about the weapon, how much damage each one does, how many shots get fired, all that sort of thing. This little block here is what allows for the shooting mechanic. Detects whether or not you're currently attacking with the bool set above, whether or not the trigger is down. Detects the time until next shot, and then produces a number of projectiles per trigger pull, and then shoots a number of times as per the for loop. Then sets a timer until it can shoot again, and this little bit here allows for semi versus fully automatic. It will turn the boolean that allows you to continue firing off if it isn't fully automatic. If it is, then you get to just keep going until you let go, which is the only other time this gets set to false. Down here is just simple instantiation. Create a projectile, give it a position, a rotation, all that. This allows for a little bit of spread. Excuse me. Allows for a little bit of spread, which can be changed per weapon. Give it a damage, give it some velocity, and make sure it's on the right layer so that it doesn't interfere with anything else on that layer, as I changed some of the game settings for. One of the requirements I was meant to go for was having shoot be polymorphic. However, in my infinite wisdom, let's say, I realized that only projectile weapons would shoot. So instead I made it only here in the projectile weapon as opposed to inheriting and changing from a standard weapon. However, I do get to correct my spelling of bullet. Now, onwards to the pawn. Excuse my pronunciation. This bit is where I have the IK set up, as it's inherits from another script, the weapon agent, which handles all of the equipping of weapons, that sort of thing. I'll bring that up in a minute. But this is what checks through and runs the IK pass. Now if we go back, I will pull up that script. There it is. And the weapon agent is what handles equipping a weapon when one is passed in. It instantiates a new weapon. This gets stored as a reference so that the weapon can do things, or thing can do things to that weapon. And I set up different positions for each of the weapons to be placed at, depending on how high the hands were meant to be, or the arms were meant to be, so that it didn't look silly when he was meant to be a bit more aiming with a sniper rifle, but the standard idle animation had his hands down by his waist, so, you know, that would have broken some things. So this just has slightly different positions so that the IK looks a little more natural. And, yeah, sets the position, sets the right layer, and then broadcasts a message for unequip. And then unequip destroys the weapon, sets everything back to null, sets everything back to default. Moving on. I also have some pickups. I have a few more than I have on the ground here, but I will show those off in a moment. There's... oh, it just disappeared. And it will respawn. There it is. That is an overheal that I have. As you can see, my health is now yellow and 150% instead of 100%. It goes back to 100. And I can take damage from that one. Deals 80 damage. I can heal myself up with that one. And then I can overheal. Oh, maybe not. Overheal. Now, the way this works, if I pull up my player, I have the current health value, which live updates, as you can see up there. However, even if I put in 500, it doesn't go above 100, unless I click Overheal, in which case as soon as I start getting higher, it turns yellow to signify you have this Overheal sort of shield, and then it's maxes out at 150. Again, I can throw in 500 and it still stays at 150. When you pick up the buff, it gives you a timer, which we'll see when it respawns again. There we go. And it lasts a few seconds until eventually it naturally decays on its own back to 100%. And this will always go back to 100% if you're above 100. It doesn't take away the 50 that it gave you, so it can't kill you or anything. The pickups themselves run off of the wonderful pickup script. Again, another abstract that's inherited down into each of the pickups. I will show off the overheal, which is what we saw me pick up there. Now, originally, as you can see here, I've got it commented out. We take in this lifespan and we destroy the game object after the lifespan. Just on start, it has a certain lifespan, destroys itself afterwards. Now, I implemented an object pool and some spawn points so that every object that I incorporate into the object pool with those set spawn points, when told to spawn or respawn, will just be pulled from the object pool, set to one of those random spawn points if it isn't already occupied. I'll show that off a bit more later on because there's a few more things that use it. But I rewrote this a little bit to make sure it worked for that as well. As such, instead of just being destroyed, it sets itself, it set active false, disables itself after waiting for a few seconds, as per this coroutine. Now this is its own function as well, because yes, I want it to do it when it starts, but I also want it to do it when something picks it up instead of destroying itself there as well. Now if we look at the overheal pack here, this is where the override comes in. It does the effect, gives the overheal duration and the overheal amount in the health script, which I'll look at in a moment. Again, fully changeable by the designers. I'll show off the prefab in a moment. The health has a few functions, some Unity events to work with. Debug is there, just for testing purposes, always useful. Damage takes in a damage, make sure it's a positive number, make sure that it isn't too much too little, and then deals damage. Instant kill is going to be great for boundaries. Two methods there. I prefer to go with the damage method because that way it utilizes the invokes and send messages for the sake of anything else that may work off of those, because in theory getting instantly killed is still dealing damage. The heal and the full heal both work off of the same principles, but you know, in reverse. And there's the overheal, which only works if you aren't already being overhealed, and then starts co-routine rather for an overheal, which is this right here. Just again heals you, quote unquote, and gives you a bit of extra health because now you've got the overheal going on. Now, I've already seen the UI for the player health. Let's go and show off some of these guns and show that they actually kill things instead of just looking pretty while they shoot. Use the shotgun because it's easy. Now if I run over to these blue triangles back here, I have more utilizations of the object pool. If I press 5 on my numpad as the testing key for spawning things, you'll see that nothing happened because it was off screen. There's 4 spawn points, one for each of these 4 triangles, and it chose the one that you couldn't see. Just my luck. Now if I press it again, now you can see that one, and a third time it spawns a third one. Now there are only 3, I can keep pressing 5 but it won't spawn anymore. There is an option that will allow it to spawn more if there aren't enough objects in the pool, and I'll show that off again in a moment. But for now, I'm going to shoot him. He goes away now, and after a few seconds he respawns either there, or perhaps over here. There he is. Now if I shoot this one, aha, he lived because shotgun spread. Not anymore. And he's back there. So the way that I've got it set up is it will randomly choose one of the available spawn points. It checks to see if there's anything left in the area of that spawn point of the thing that it's meant to spawn, and if there is, it's not available, so it's not even in the list for consideration. As such, I can shoot and kill any of these dummies, and when they respawn, I'll respawn in one of 2 places. And I can do it again, and after another 3 seconds he'll respawn either here or over there. And, you know, rinse and repeat, I can just keep doing this. And now he goes over there. So the code that makes that work is of a few things. If I bring my code back over, if it would like to respond, there we go. I'm going to get rid of that script because I do actually need a third one and it's not showing up. Cursed, only having so many tabs open at a time. Spawn point manager. There we go. So the dummy is the basic script on those 3 dummies, and all this does is grab the health, set it to 90 so that it's slightly less than the player. I'll probably end up doing this with enemies when I start implementing them properly. Also because the sniper rifle deals 90 damage, and the player has 100 health to begin with, so it prevents the player from getting one shot but allows the player to one-shot the enemies. However, they shouldn't spawn the sniper rifles very often, but that's neither here nor there. Now, in the health, there is when they take damage, if current health ends up equaling 0, then it sends a message, activates on die, and on die invoke. The dummies do have, in the prefabs, something that happens on die. They set themselves inactive because they're part of the object pool, which is up here. I've got, it spawns 3 dummies. This is the thing that lets it expand or not. Has a size, a number of pooled objects, all that sort of deal, and I can put any number of things into here. Spawn point manager, once again, similar. It handles the different spawn points. And this folds up neatly away in case you don't want to look at it. And there's a bool for each of them, again, to see whether or not the spawn is in use. If it's in use, then it can't be spawned on again until it's no longer in use. Back to the actual code of this. When the dummy dies, on die is triggered, it goes to the game manager, activates the respawn. All it needs is the name of the dead thing and the amount of time it takes to respawn. There is a setting I made in here as well. If the respawn time is -1, then the coroutine stops. It's only meant to have spawned once and no more. So at least there is that option there now. Otherwise, it waits for the respawn time and then goes to spawn things. Takes in the string. The string grabs a transform from the spawn point manager, which we'll look at here. Spawn point manager, excuse me, has a class with an array of that class and then a list of locations for that array. This is the transform in question, or the function that returns the transform. First thing it does is clear the array so that any previous searches don't contaminate the next searches. It then runs through a for loop and grabs all of the spawn locations that aren't already in use, which is this function here. It will create a physics overlap sphere and check every collider it hits within a radius of 1 to see if they are the thing that it's supposed to spawn. E.g., if the power-up's still there, don't spawn another power-up on top of it. If the dummy is still there, don't spawn another dummy on top of it. If the sniper's still there, so on and so forth. Then, back in here, it will run through another for loop, and if the spawn name is equal to the name that's been passed in, and it's not already in use, then it gets added to a list, and then it will random through that list to return the location. And we go back to Game Manager. So it returns a location. We then use that location to get an object from the object pool. Location position, location rotation, and a name. Looks familiar, doesn't it? The object pool requires these three things. It searches through the game objects in the pooled objects and then finds the first one that isn't active and has the right name, and then it grabs the transform, sets the position rotation to the one passed in, sets the name, and sets it active, and then returns it. However, if there aren't enough, or it's not found, anything like that, then it will create one if allowed. Specifically though, if allowed. That is the checkbox I mentioned earlier on the Object Pool Manager. Should expand. This is what allows it to create more. Very useful for things that spawn rapidly. Now the reason I wasn't able to do it with bullets is because of the way that I have them spawned in. It spawns a projectile instead of a game object, and that was causing some conflict. In the next one perhaps it will have changed. Maybe I will have fixed that. But until then, this has been Milestone 2. I've got some weapons in now, and all the wonders of horrid violence that brings with it. Yes. Pew pew. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one.